This is for people with zero technical experience. This is for people with no editing skills. If you're a first-time editor, if you haven't edited your project, if you're a technophobe, all are welcome here because, well, in my day job, what I do, some of you know, some of you see me every day, and I'm out there in the editing bay answering questions about Final Cut, about compression, about DaVinci, about Premiere. Tonight, none of that. Why? I'm talking about the process of editing. Now, some of you are thinking, hold it. You're not talking about Premiere, you're not talking about DaVinci. What? Aren't editing and Premiere the same thing? Do I hear anybody say that? Are they the same thing?
No.
No way. Now, some of you more observant may have noticed there is an image of a single-edged razor blade there. Why is it there? I like it. Looks kind of cool. But why is it there? This was my first editing tool. When I was a little kid, I found out, I had a reel-to-reel recorder. I found out that if you cut up the tape and scotch taped it back together, you could change the way, you could change what somebody was saying. That was my first edit. Later on, when I was in school, there was videotape editing. You could edit the image and the sound at the same time. Then I started working in videotape as an editor, but eventually everything went digital. Everything went into computers. So I became an avid media composer, certified editor, but there was also Media 100, there was Video Toaster Flyer, there was the NewTek Flyer, and now there is still Premiere, there is still Final Cut, and now DaVinci. I've used them all. I've used all of those systems, and you know what? At some level, they all cut things, they all serve the same purpose. Now, with Premiere, DaVinci, Final Cut, I can do a lot more than just cut up one piece of tape. But really, I'm editing the same way I did when I was splicing up tape. Now, who knows who Richard Avedon was? Great photographer. He photographed royalty. He photographed homeless circus performers. Brilliant photography. I saw him on TV when he was alive. Somebody asked him, "Oh, what kind of a camera do you use?" And he dismissed the question. He said, "That doesn't matter. I could go downstairs to Duane Reade right now, spend $20 on a camera, and I could take pictures with that. The camera, the lens, not important." This is a man who used the finest cameras and the finest lenses ever made. He said, machinery is important. What's important is what goes in front of the lens. And that's what I'm going to emphasize to you tonight. It's not so important your editing technique and all the skills you develop in Final Cut or Premiere or whatever. It's looking at your basic material. The process of editing is much like Michelangelo, the sculptor, considered the greatest sculptor in the Western civilization. Somebody posed the question, well, how do you get these beautiful figures out of big pieces of stone? His answer, the figure is already in the stone. I am taking away the stone, that is not the figure. That is your job, to take away everything that does not serve your message. No matter what kind of video you're doing, there's some kind of a message. Why edit? You want to arrange and present your material into the most potent message possible. Why do you want to do this? Everybody on their way here tonight passed a few video screens. When I say a few, there's one up here on 48th Street. It's 500 feet. It wraps around a building. It's like 25 stories high. On every taxi, there are video screens. Inside the taxi, there are video screens. You go down to the subway, there's video screens. In the lobbies of buildings, there's more screens. You get in the elevator, there's screens. At the supermarket checkout, there's screens. At the bodega checkout, there's screens. At the taco truck, there's a screen. What I'm trying to emphasize is that you and everybody else are hit with a barrage of messages, videos, all kinds of messages all day, and it's relentless. And if you're like me, maybe you check your email first thing in the morning, and maybe you listen to Spotify or watch cable last thing before you go to bed. You're getting that barrage every waking moment. Your message is going out there. This is your competition. You think, oh, I'm going to put it on this channel, and people who watch this channel are going to be... No, nobody watches a channel. They're watching everything. So your message is competing with everything, all that barrage out there, that relentless barrage that never, ever stops. So you have to shape your message as sharply as the people who make Barbie. Another thing I want to stress tonight is the need to know your material. Again, going back to Michelangelo. Now, did he order up a stone on Amazon or something? No. He went out to the quarry himself, and he said, I want this piece of the mountain. Cut me off this piece of the mountain. That's what I'm going to make this sculpture. He knew his stuff intimately, and he knew also that he would be spending likely the next 2 years with that big slab of marble with his face in it banging away the next 2 years. So he really wanted to make sure that piece of marble was going to serve him for 2 years. I wish I'd known that before I jumped in and edited a feature documentary, but that's not here nor there. Okay. You're always telling a story. Whether you want to or not, I'll tell you a story about this story. I do a public access program, but one week I wasn't going to do it, and I knew I'd almost blown the deadline, and I said, oh my God, if I don't give a new show to Master Control tonight by the deadline, they're going to show a repeat. I don't like repeats, and I especially didn't like last week's show. What am I going to do? What can I come up with really quickly? I looked at my computer screen, and it's showing me a slideshow, and I was like, photographs, great, I'll do a slideshow. I just set the slideshow to go, recorded 28 minutes, uploaded it, boom, that was my show. I forgot about it. The day after the show aired, I saw somebody, right? And she said, oh, I really liked the show last night. I was like, oh, thank you so much. You told a really interesting story. I said, oh, thank you. And inside I said, what? Story? Hold it. Did I show the wrong folder of photographs? No. I'd already made that slideshow and taken out all the personal, the family photos, the photos in pubs. This was just landmarks and buses and underground stations and castles. In fact, I put it on random. I put it on shuffle so that it would not tell a chronological story. Yet, she got a story from it. You are always telling a story whether you want to or not. You're stuck with it. Why? Because we watch television, we watch our phones, we watch YouTube, and we expect a story. And if there's not a story there, our brains start putting them together. It's like looking at clouds and saying, oh, there's a rabbit, there's a castle. No, there's not a rabbit, there's not a castle. It's just a bunch of water vapor hanging in the sky, but our minds want to put order to it. I did that documentary I mentioned, right? Director had never directed a feature thing before, and really I'd never edited something that was going to be released in theaters or anything like that. But he's telling me when we started getting the footage back, and the footage was coming from Asia, and we were getting it back every week, okay? So this was a contemporaneous documentary. It was we were editing it as we're getting footage back. And he's going on, oh, we're going to tell the story of these people, and we're going to tell this story, and this happened to these people in the 1970s. And it's like, no, you're not. You're not going to tell those stories. I'm going to tell you what story you're going to tell. We're going to tell the story that comes in on our files, on our video. That's the story we're going to tell. We can tell another story, but if we don't have pictures, we don't have sound, it's going to be all text on a screen and narration. A lousy detective walks into a murder scene. Let's say if a lady gets murdered, he walks into the scene and decides, it's either boyfriend or son-in-law. And he starts looking for clues based on his theory that he just pulled out of his posterior. That's a bad detective. That's a lousy detective. A good detective walks into a crime scene open mind. They don't decide, it must have been, it's likely this, that. No. Good detective collects evidence. That's all they do at first. Collects evidence with an open mind. There comes a time where they lay out all of that evidence on a table, on a computer. They consider it as a whole. And that good detective will say, what story is this evidence telling me? What story does this tell me? That's what you're doing. You're looking at all the stuff, all of your material, and saying, what kind of a story does this tell me? What is going to be useful? Now, some of us, and I'm guilty of this, some of us approach editing like, I got to put this together. Like you're going to put together a sandwich, okay? Now, think about it. It's a lot of effort to put together a video, as you've all found out or about to find out. Anybody, I can't boil water, but I could make you a good sandwich, okay? Anybody can make a sandwich. Do you want to spend all that time, all that effort, and all your connections that you've used to make this video happen? You want to make a sandwich out of that? No. You want to make the most potent message that you can make. Here's another thing I see a lot of, and this is, I'll call this deadly. I see people sit down, they're going to edit a project. They're excited about editing the project. They start looking for footage because they don't know where their footage is. Oh, I shot this, there's a good close-up of this guy doing a hand flip, and yeah, it's all in there somewhere. Then you have what? You have 45 minutes of footage? You have 7 hours of footage? You're never going to find anything. You have to be organized in order to edit. How many of you have spent long, miserable periods of time looking for that one clip? Oh, I saw this, but it's in there somewhere. Or he said this. And you're going through. The best time to start organizing is the Wednesday before you actually sit down and start your timeline. Because if you sit down and you know where everything is, then you're not fishing, you're not wondering. And once you know what you have to work with, you're going to be a lot more efficient in putting that together. When I sit down and edit, I know where everything is, and I have a pretty good idea of what I want to do with it. It may not be the right idea. I may not have a good way of putting it together, but I know where it is, and I'll start putting it together. And pretty soon, if it's not looking the way I want to, I can make a determination on that. You have to make them watch. You turn on a YouTube video, you've got that itchy finger. If that video in the first few seconds isn't what you want to see, click. That's your enemy too. Click, because there's always something out there, maybe more interesting, maybe more sexy, who knows? There's something else out there that's beckoning to them right now. The phone is going off in my pocket right now. There's always something beckoning. So you have to grab their attention. You have to hold their attention. Let's talk about what you got. You got an envelope of SD cards, or you got a drive with hours of video, audio, and pictures. Again, catalog everything. Know what you have. I'm going to give you an example that's totally made up. NYCHA, New York City Housing, right? They shoot a few interviews with NYCHA residents. They take some pictures of the building, the bad conditions of the building, and they have a few minutes of a city councilwoman talking who's been active on this thing. And already they're excited about doing the project, and they've sat down and wrote an intro, and maybe they asked their friend who's an actor, oh, can you voice over this? It'd be really good if you voiced it, if I had this person's voice. All right. They're putting the thing together. Maybe they went through the interviews quickly, and there is a gem somewhere in there that's going to be very, very valuable, not only for your finished edit, but for your promos, your clips, and as a way to get people to pay attention. Now, you've watched all the interviews. You have 4 different NYCHA residents talking about their experiences, and you kind of know what they say, but you didn't listen to every word. Somewhere in there, there is a grandmother, and she says this sentence: I got the eviction notice on the day my granddaughter was graduating. That's a slap in the face. That tells a story right there. Tells you she's a grandmother, she's living with a granddaughter. You already know she's living in NYCHA housing, and this big dramatic. That gets your attention. Anybody who is a grandmother received an eviction notice, they're going to pay attention. They're going to say, hey, what's that about? Yes.
And it presents future conflict within the story.
Yes.
We all love.
Yeah. And that makes you watch. You're going to generate notes and transcripts on all your materials, on everything. If you don't watch everything, if you don't listen to every word, you're going to miss a gem. You're going to miss something very important. That sentence that I said with the grandmother, that's one soundbite, what is it, 6, 7 words? Lasts 8 seconds. If I was doing that piece, I wouldn't do a title up front. I wouldn't do music. I wouldn't do a brilliant narration, even though I think I could do a brilliant narration. No. Boom. I put that grandmother saying that at the very top. Eyewitness News every night. They'll lead with a clip. They look for clips like that. Why? To get your attention. And to keep your attention through all the commercials they're going to show in between the end of the 11 o'clock, the end of the 10 o'clock show and the beginning of Eyewitness News. They put that right in your face. They put that over the credits of the 10 o'clock show to grab your attention, and so you do not change the channel. Okay? Do read everything. Start the editing on paper. We're going to talk about that because that saves you a lot of time. It's much easier to find something printed on paper, or it can be on a Word document. It could be anywhere. Word documents, you can search a word. 5 hours of interviews, type up the word housing, you'll get, if you have a transcript, you'll get every instance, every time somebody said the word housing, those sentences will come up. Okay? So you want to arrange your clips to focus the message. You want to rearrange for clarity. You have to be clear. You assume that everybody is paying strict attention to your picture and your video. In fact, a lot of people are, kind of half paying attention, reading the phone. The thing that keeps them connected mainly is the audio. So first, clarity. It has to be clear. There's a lot of voices talking at everybody at once, a lot of distractions in the modern world. Make sure it's crystal clear what your message is. Then I go for impact or dramatic timing. But there's no drama if not everybody gets, not everybody groks the point that you're trying to make. And then each scene, you're still telling a story, okay? Each scene needs to reinforce the one before and set up the next scene. Sounds complicated, doesn't it? Well, it is. But again, if you think about the totality of all your material, you'll start being able to rearrange and really build this thing. So what I was saying, strong start, very strong start, because you only have a few precious seconds. You got their attention. That's a very, very valuable thing. Don't lose it. Very strong start, okay? Grab the viewer by the collar and don't let them go. Don't give them a chance to click away. You're laughing, but live by this, or else no one will ever see your video. Always cut sound first. If you're taking notes, I want you to write it down just like this. Always, period. Cut, period. Sound, period. First, period. Why? Sound is super important. Most of us do not make purely visual videos. A purely visual video would be something with music or natural sound and no talking at all. Has anybody here made a video like that? Most of the stuff we cut involves people saying words. You have to cut the sound first. That's where most of your story is going to be told, with the sound. And the reason to cut it first, you cut it together so it sounds right. Let's say you've hired an award-winning videographer, and she has these beautiful shots for your documentary, your video, whatever you're doing, and you have a mediocre soundtrack. Shots ain't gonna look so good. Let's say you have mediocre pictures. The pictures are okay, they're nothing special. Video is adequate, but your soundtrack is amazing. Makes the video look better. Your pictures will look better with a good soundtrack, and good-looking pictures deteriorate if the soundtrack isn't there to support it. So very important for dramatic timing, for naturalness. You know, if you can hear the cuts in the dialogue, that's artificial. Always cut the sound first. Close your eyes. You're not sure of the sound? Listen to the edit. If it works good with your eyes closed, good. The other reason is, now I don't mean to imply that I just cut the soundtrack alone. No, I bring the picture with me. Every cut, I make the decisions on where to make the cuts based on the sound, and the picture sits there for a while I'm working on the sound. When I'm satisfied with the sound is good, then I look at the pictures, and it's like, oh, that cut isn't going to work. Well, I can do a lot with the pictures. I have graphics, I have cutaways, I have another angle, I have reaction shots from other people, I have all those things. Lots of ways to fix the video. Audio don't work, your sound has to work good. When you're logging your footage, when you're watching your footage, evaluate. Listen for sound effects, listen for atmosphere, natural sound, note where it is. Listen for emotion sounds, note where it is. Look for cutaways. You're going to need cutaways, you're going to need reactions, you're going to need close-ups, details, all that stuff goes in to a really good, engaging video. Listen, what story are they telling? Because everybody, you interview anybody, they're telling some kind of a story, okay? And what picture is being painted. Be cognizant of what picture is being painted. So, this is the order I work in, but this is a very practical way. I don't think there may be projects that this doesn't apply to, but for most projects, take care of the sound. Make sure you've got legible words, legible soundtrack. Okay. Then, when you're satisfied with the flow of the soundtrack, and the flow is very important. If it flows good, it communicates better. Okay? So if you're satisfied with the way the soundtrack flows and the story that tells, then you work on your video. I leave the graphics and the animation after I've cut the video. Because you start putting in graphics or animation before, and you say, oh, I'm just going to put it over this part. And then you realize you're cutting away the most interesting part of the interview visually because, oh, I said I'm going to put this. So that's why there's an order. After you have your video and you know what's there, put in your graphic and animation. if there's any. Then you fine-tune your sound mix and add the music and sound effects. And finally, the last thing is credits and subtitles, because the credits and subtitles always change. Always change. You're going to change your mind. The producer's going to change their mind. That always changes. Leave that to last. And most important, make them bloody care. You know why? Nobody cares. Nobody cares about your documentary. Nobody cares about your TV show. Nobody cares. Okay, accept that. Make them care. Give them a reason to care. Catch their attention. Maybe at the end, you catch their attention, you hold their attention for your video. Maybe at the end, they'll start caring. That will make a difference to them. That is your job as an artist. Make people see, make people hear, make them think. You are an artist. Now, my favorite John Lennon quote. If John Lennon is remembered for nothing else, he should be remembered for this sentence. Super important for everybody in this room. He said, every child is an artist until they are told they are not. Oh, when you were kids, you had crayons, paints, building blocks, you put together stuff with Scotch tape, whatever. You were an artist then. At some point, maybe it was a teacher telling you, you're not supposed to draw outside the line. Maybe it was a security officer, tapping you on the shoulder while you were bombing a wall at 3 a.m. Okay? But somebody told you, you're not an artist. They lied. They lied. You are an artist. I can prove it. You're here right now. You're making videos. You do other things. Some of you are musicians. Some of you write. Some of you sing. You're all artists. And now you're all artists involved with the most powerful medium in history. Okay, we are all out of time. Thank you all so much for coming. Any questions? Hey, any questions? Write them in the comments, please. Don't forget to subscribe and ring that bell. What does the bell do on YouTube anyway? Does anybody know? There's a bell there. They notify you. Okay, but does the bell ring?
Yeah.
It does ring.
Every time.
Hey, you want a small thrill? Ring that bell right now. Anyway, thank you all for coming. Good night.